Hello, Steve White, Steve White's 89. This is so much to talk about today. Alex KurtzMan did an interview to promote The Man Who Fell to Earth, and in it he actually acknowledged that the biggest failure of his life was the Mummy reboot, which was, for a Tom Cruise film it was good. I actually really enjoyed it, but it wasn't supposed to be a Tom Cruise film. It was supposed to be Universal movies, horror movie, and they were supposed to be bringing back the Universal monsters characters for a whole dark universe, and it just did so poorly they cancelled the whole thing, and it was really bad. It was almost like what happened with the Spider-Man trilogy, the second Spider-Man trilogy. The first Spider-Man trilogy with Tobey Maguire went really well. It was a hit. They did a second one. They got through the second of the three, and because Kurtzman did such a bad job of it, writing it, and it did so poorly, they didn't finish the series and do a third one. They had to reboot again and bring little Tom in and do the new series, the new trilogy, which the third film has made, I think, twice as much as the other movies. A lot of people are acting like it was normal. I'm like, no, this is not normal. The other films didn't make this much. People saying, oh, the pandemic thing is over. It's just returning to normal. Like, no, this is bigger than this. It would have been bigger either way. It's not actually to do with that. So that's sort of interesting. But yeah, it was just fascinating to see him acknowledge this failure and then try and spin it into a wonderful thing. Like, I learned so much. I learned what not to do. I learned not to ignore my feelings because things felt wrong and there were so many cooks in the kitchen. I let them victimize me, and they did what they wanted, and then they ruined my film, was the way he sort of spun it. And he's saying, well, I won't let that happen again now. I don't do anything unless I feel right about it. Now, what I'm curious about is when Star Trek is finally done, when they finally give up and someone else gets the license and makes new Star Trek one day. It will happen one day. Even if I have to live 40 years, I'm going to live to see these guys expire and someone else take over Star Trek. I will outlive all of them and I will see it. It will happen. But I'm wondering when it actually gets to the point where he's retired, will he actually talk about his whole career and actually say, well, actually the biggest failure of my life was taking over Star Trek because I ruined a franchise that was living and breathing. The Universal monsters didn't have a fan base. We didn't kick it off, and we didn't find an audience for it. But Star Trek already had an audience, and we alienated them from it and killed it. So that's a far bigger failure than not failing to relaunch something that it didn't really exist. The Universal monsters had been big in the 30s and 40s and into the 50s, and then they sort of disappeared, and they had a couple of little nostalgic revisitations, like the Monsters Club. Was it Monsters Club? No, the Monsters Club was the one with Vincent Price. Monster Squad, that's it. There are a few little revisitations, but that's it. This was an attempt to sort of do something new and reboot it, but differently, and there was no guarantee that was going to work. But Star Trek was alive and active, and it had been, it never really stopped, even though there was a couple of years between Enterprise and the first Star Trek film going into production, about 3 years. There were fan films in that time that was keeping it alive, so it really was a different situation. So I'm very curious to see. It's very convenient now that the Mummy's done and the Universal monsters, the dark universe is all gone, to look back and say, oh, that's a total failure. You can't say that about Star Trek now because they're still trying to sell it to people because they're still making it. So I'm wondering, will he acknowledge the failure that this is later on in his career when this is in the past, when it's not still, the current thing he's trying to, make money out of. So I'm curious about that. But I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. I saw this article and I just thought I have to comment on it because it's just too juicy in one way for him to acknowledge he failed, because he did, but then to wonder, will he ever acknowledge his other failures, the ones that he's currently not trying to, continue making money out of. and grift on, because he's still grifting on the original Star Trek. So they still own the IP, they're still making money, they're still being paid to make the show, even if it's not successful or anything. So I just really wonder if he'll be honest about it one day, because he is being honest about this now, it seems. To an extent, he's not totally taking the blame, but he's at least acknowledging that it did fail. But yeah, we'll see. I'm going to go. Bye.